Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot, and today we are going to do a deep dive into the brand new iFly Boeing 737 MAX Service Pack 1 electronic flight bag. The EFB has been completely redesigned, at least visually. System-wise you'll see that a lot is still the same, but has been made to look a lot nicer than it used to on the previous versions. So let's get right into this one and start with a look at the new iFly 737 EFB. By default, you'll see that it turns itself off, so a quick tap is going to turn it on. Now the first thing that you're most likely to spot over here is that you're actually able to change the background, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So for today's video, I just want to work through all the apps one by one over here and show you what's available. So starting in a little bit of a logical sequence, aka in the sequence that you would use for a typical flight. Now, the first thing that you would normally do is to set your airplane's configuration. So that's under the My Plane app. And that's where you can change all the different things for your aircraft, like the units, the engine types, the joystick sensitivity. You can switch on an independent nose wheel steering, which basically means that you have a dedicated tiller or not. And then you can switch between aspirated and unaspirated TAT probes, which basically means if you go for unaspirated, you'll have to manually insert the temperature on the N1 limit page down in the FMC. You also have a couple of model options down here, such as the ability to set, or rather to display, the captain's or the first officer's seats, as well as changing in which position the seat is. Now, finally, you can add an air stair to your airplane, as well as a Wi-Fi antenna and sun blinds, where sun blinds basically means those blinds on the sides over here. The plane always has the ones that you can attach down here at the bottom. So those are always included in any 737, but just like in the real world, you or airlines can order additional sun blinds that you can put at the side over here, like this. Alright, apart from that, you've got all the features that you already know from the iFly that you could previously also control in the previous EFB. So all your company options and all that stuff, which does save with every singular livery. Overall, I couldn't find many things that are new in here. However, the runway advisory and awareness system is now operational. That was in-op in the previous version, and this is now fully operational down here. Alright, and that is pretty much the airplane options that you can switch from the electronic flight bag. Lots of nice stuff in here, especially the auto set fuel pumps. If you do want to do longer flights but you're not around for the entire time, then you can have the co-pilot turn off the center pumps when the center tank is running dry. Also, you can change the display unit colors over here. This one is new, and this allows you to basically change all the colors that you can find. For example, if you're not so happy with the colors of the primary flight display, you can change that down here. Now let's go back to the main screen, and now that our airplane is set up, we can change its panel state, which we can do on the Save and Load button down here. Down here you can save flights, or rather flight plans, or panel configurations, and then you could load them later on. For example, we can just go on the ground power panel state down here. Let's hit load panel config, and you'll see that our airplane is going to change into that configuration. Now, since I do have the realistic display unit power up option enabled, this is going to take a while until the displays are going to come to life, but these options are all in here in the save and load page. Now, from here on, the next step to a flight would be to ask for your ground services. And that's what we got down here. So the ground services are things like adding stairs, attaching the jetway, the ground power unit, galley services, and so on. These are not synchronized with the GSX. There is currently no official integration, but you can get all these things over here, and that's also where you can set your chocks, your safety pin, the safety cones, where you can add or remove the protective covers, open and close the access doors, service doors, and so on. So again, lots of options over here. Like, I personally do like the radome option down there, because if you do open that one up, and if we find our airplane, Here it is. Then just go to the front. I mean, those are all just little toys. No real functions behind them. And then... But I kind of think it's nice to see these things. Visual gimmicks, operationally not relevant, but nonetheless, kind of nice to have. Even if they're sometimes at a low level of detail, as you can see over here. Nonetheless, nice thing to have. Alright, now... Apart from that, you can also reset the IDGs, the fire extinguishers, and reset the oxygen battery and battery temperature down here if those do run out of limits. And you do have a pushback option down there, which kind of reminds me of the old pushback option PMDG had, where you just entered the straight line distance and then the degrees, and then it would push you into that direction. Now, those are the things you would do pre-flight. Now let's have a look into some things that you would do for the actual flight preparation. After you've determined your airline, you can choose the PAs that are going to be run, as well as their volume down here, which are rather nice little gimmicks that you got. And then you can also control the doors from the dedicated door page. As you can see, one left is open right now. We can also open some cargo doors down here, and you can arm and disarm the slides. And just like that, you can do the same up here. So if we will go to close all doors and then to arm all doors once they're all closed, then you can do all that stuff down here. Would be nice if we could automate that process so that the cabin crew could take over when necessary. Now, you can see that an armed door actually not be opened over here. In the real world, opening it while armed would of course fire the slide. Looks like that is currently inhibited. If we do disarm the door, then you can see we can open it straight away. So just something to have in mind over here right now. Alright, there is a failures page where you can trigger a lot of different failures for the aircraft. In some cases, interesting ones, like an FCC fail. In other cases, things aren't as spectacular, but nonetheless, I do think there is a nice number of failures in here, probably more than most flight simmers are ever going to use anyway. Now, moving on from there, let's go into our typical pre-flight sequence and what the iFly EFB offers. So we're starting on the Navigraph app, because that's the one where you can get your en route charts, your terminal charts, as well as your operational flight plan. We can import the Simbrief flight plan down here. For example, here we got the Iceland air flight from Seattle to Keflavik. And then on the OFP page, we can find the different pages for the OFP. You'll notice that these are categorized based on the chapters included in the PDF document by Simbrief. So I'm using the Lufthansa format over here, and that one got the OFP, then the ATC flight plan, dispatch information, crew information, weather, and so on. But what you see on the left side here really just comes from the chapters in the PDF document. So this may be different depending on the layout that you are using. From there we're going to the terminal charts, and you can see that the departure, destination and first alternate are automatically imported. You can view all the different charts over here. For example, here we got the taxi chart for Seattle, and you got two options next to all those charts. The first one is the ability to pin the chart that you can use over here in order to make the chart readily available on the pinned tab on the left hand side, which is really nice, works really well. Let me just demonstrate that for you. Let's also get the parking gates, and then we can go over here and we got both charts. If a chart is geo-referenced, like for example the airport chart over here, you can click that button on the bottom, and then you can see that the chart is getting overlaid with the en route map. Right now we're in Keflavik, but if we do not lock this to our airplane position and then go over to Seattle like this, we should now get our ground chart overlaid on the en route chart like this. That's a pretty neat feature, making it fairly easy to navigate, for example, on the ground. Of course, if you do not overlay a chart, then you will find that you always have the safe taxi map available down there as well. So if you remove that overlay, then go to the en route chart all the way in, you can see you got your live moving map anyway. So that's another cool feature that comes with the Navigraph chart suite. Cool thing, I like it. You do currently not have access to Flight Simulator 24's Lido charts, so a third-party Navigraph subscription is required. However, I would much recommend it anyway because of the nav data updates and because the Jefferson chart set that you get from Navigraph includes a lot of additional airports that the standard Lido set does not have, because Lido is tailored for airliners, while Jefferson is highly engaged in general aviation as well. Alright, now with that we've basically had a look at all the different charts. You do have the option to send the flight plan to the FMC as well as send all data to aircraft, which will replace the FMC and aircraft data when pressed. Now, let's have a look into what aircraft data actually means over here. So, let's go down. We've got two apps, the Payload and Performance, or rather Payload and Balance, as well as Performance. Let's start with the Payload and Balance, because this is where you load the aircraft. You've got two operational modes over here, Basic and Advanced. In Basic, you simply have your plan figures, then you have what's currently on board, and then you have the maximum that the airplane can take. There are 4 different versions of the 737 included in the iFly Max, and those vary from 166 to 176 to 189 passengers on the Max 8, and then 197 on the 8200. So over here you simply enter whatever you want. You can also type this with your keyboard, as you can see up there. However, do note that if you're not using an American keyboard, then you may not be able to type certain things, like for example the back key that is for some reason limited to American keyboards, the way I see it. So I'm pressing backwards now, it doesn't delete anything, have to do it on the on-screen keyboard over here, or on the soft keyboard as iFly calls it. So for the fuel, let's just load some 5,000 kilos over here, and then we'll also go with 500 kilos in the hold. You can see this is now planned, but not on board yet. You can also see the target weight and center of gravity that you could use for your takeoff calculations before the boarding is actually complete. Down here you also have the current data, which is based on what's currently on board the aircraft. Now, you do have a couple buttons down here at the bottom, which are either read from, that way you simply load whatever is in the airplane in here. Then you got load aircraft, and that one is used to actually transfer the planned load into the plane. And you can see 3 options over there, which are immediate, real time, and fast time. I gotta say, the iFly is one of the few aircraft where the real-time boarding kind of mimics what a typical boarding would look like in an airline. So if you're really loading 197 passengers on a 737-8200, it's going to take about 18 to 19 minutes, depending on how long the refueling takes. The longest I've seen from literally empty to literally max is about 23 minutes in a 737, so that's kind of what your timing could depend on. But I really do like how the real time actually simulates a real time. Kind of nice if you simulate typical low-cost behavior. So let's just go for immediate right now. That way you can see planes now loaded. You can also see a map of where the passengers are located exactly down here. Now if you go to the advanced menu, you can see that you can fill the different zones in the plane one by one. So if you want your passengers to sit in a certain configuration, you can do that down here. The same also applies to loading bags in the forward and aft compartments, as well as loading fuel in the different tanks. Down here you can also enter the planned trip fuel and the taxi out fuel to get a weight and balance graph. On the right hand side, since we're already talking about the graph, you got the certified envelope for the center of gravity, and you basically got to make sure that your flight's values remain in here. So let's just take a 2000 kilo at trip fuel and 145 kilo taxi fuel. Then you should kind of see the envelope in here. And basically make sure that it stays in here. Now, you can send that directly to the CDU so that the performance page is filled out automatically. From here we are going into the performance app, and the performance app is your takeoff and landing calculator. So for a normal pre-flight sequence, you would start with entering the airport. For example, we got Keflavik over here. We select our runway. Now, something that's unfortunately grayed out here is the runway length. Would be nice if we could edit that manually so that we could actually calculate intersection takeoffs. Of course, it would be even nicer if we could actually select the intersections in any menu over here, like you can with a Phoenix Airbus. You got a runway condition, which has pretty much all the conditions that you got available in the standard Boeing OPT. Let's go with a wet runway today. Then you got your flaps. Unfortunately, no optimum settings simulated over here. Air conditioning on, anti-ice off. Rating, again, no optimum simulated, unfortunately, so I would recommend always to start with the lowest. And for the assumed temperature, we actually have an optimum, which is the max setting that you have down here. Now, finally, we have our takeoff weight. So right now, that is, let's say, 61 tons. And then the center of gravity, which you could get from the previous page. Finally, down here you got your weather, and you can also simply load the real-life weather down there, which makes it kind of easy. You can read the NSFS data as well. That way, things are going to auto-populate. And when everything's filled in, hit calculate, and then you do get your takeoff performance data over here, which is quite nice. Now, depending on the version of flight plan that you use, so for example, my Lufthansa format over here does have an automatic dispatch calculation that you can see down here. But if you do not have an automatic dispatch takeoff and landing calculation, then you need to perform one manually, which you can do up here on the landing dispatch page. So that one, let's say our destination is Keflavik, landing on runway 10. The runway is expected wet. Let's just go with a flap 30 landing. Air conditioning is on, anti-ice is off. Auto brakes, well, for dispatch you always go max because you want to see what your airplane can do performance-wise. And now we can fill this out and calculate. And down here it should give us certain pieces of data, such as the maximum landing weight. Don't ask me why it's not doing that over here. That is kind of the most important piece of information, your maximum landing weight. Some reason, iFly still has to improve this page a little bit. Alright, finally let's go on to the landing en route page, and on that one it automatically fills whatever you had selected on the dispatch page. Then you could go whatever settings you want, really. You do have non-normal checklists here, which is quite nice. And then let's just enter, say, 61 tons of landing weight over here. The rest is automatically taken over from the dispatch. Then you can calculate that, and you get your landing data. Now, you do have the real weather tab, and this is quite a cool one, because it enables you to get pretty much any airport you want. So, let's say we want to know London Heathrow, then we can just put that in, request weather, and it's going to fetch the real-world weather for London Heathrow. So that's quite nice. I wish this was available down in the FMC as a weather request in the data link, but unfortunately no data link in the airplane just yet. So for the time being, this serves as a very nice substitute. Well, there is one more page that we gotta have a look at, and that is the EFB settings. That's also manual. Well, starting with the manual, that's quite easy. You got your user guide down here, and you have all the other PDF manuals, such as the flight plan supplement, flight plan instructions, procedure instructions, and so on. So all that stuff is available in here. Now, I couldn't find out yet if you can add stuff manually, because it would be really cool if you could just add, you know, real life FCOMs and stuff if you have any. I mean, Google is gonna get you any. So it would be really nice if you could add that over here as well. If you do know whether that's possible, then put it in the comments below. I couldn't find a way, but that's for now. Alright, our last page then is the EFB settings, and just to show you that one, in the EFB settings you have things like an automatic lock, which you can set to up to 30 minutes. I couldn't find any way to make this unlimited for the time being, which would be nice because, you know, you can put your en route chart up here while flying and then just have it move by. Would be nice, but apart from that, you have some general units of measurements and stuff, and then you have the wallpaper page, which I think is really nice. So you got your standard iFly backgrounds here, a couple of very nice pictures among them, and you can also add your own simply by adding pictures into the appropriate folder. Now there is one small problem. You can see I've added 2 pictures my own there, one of an inoperative MMR, which I kind of like down here. And then I've also tried to add my own channel background picture, but you can see it's kind of cutting off at the sides. Note where it's cut off here at the brake fan and then on the eye of my logo. Well, in the picture here you can clearly see that it should be a lot larger, like it is when I'm flying the Phoenix. So for some reason, when you take a picture the exact same size as the default images, they're kind of cut off at the sides, while the default images are not. So that's probably a small bug that they're hopefully going to work on. But just so you know, this exists. This is quite nice. You can change a lot of this around so that you can customize your electronic flight bag. Some really cool feature. Alright, finally you got the about page. Well, tells you that it's iFly Jets EFB version 1.0. Congratulations on that. And that is the new iFly EFB. Hope you found this video interesting. Certainly a much needed improvement over the previous version. I do very much enjoy this one. Thank you very much iFly for creating this. Finally, a little feature that I want to show you. You can detach your cable, and when you click the screw on the top right of the CDU, you can put your EFB down here so that you can actually enter stuff directly without having to constantly look around. Neat feature, clearly directly taken from PMDG, but I do appreciate it nonetheless. So yeah, that's the iFly EFB. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Let's do it again by pressing that screw again. And that's what I can offer you today. The first officer EFB is independent from the left one, so you can see different background, different everything. You can operate it completely independently. And that's what I got for you today. I do hope you liked this one. Leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. As always, like, comment and subscribe. Tell me what you like the most about the new iFly EFB. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for watching. As always, like, comment and subscribe. And then I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one.